Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross, licensed agent with Second City Real Estate. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley, founder and owner of GC Realty. Mark, how's it going over there?
It's going good. It's going good. I almost had you cracked there on the opening. I thought I was going to get you. We have to do a retake, but good, man. I mean, you and me met the other day, and we were going over some numbers with the help of one of our podcast listeners, Dave Hart, who's helping us do some of the kind of back end stuff with marketing. But looking at the numbers, people are obviously spreading the word, and I'm asking you today that if you are not sharing this episode, then more than likely your next real estate investment is going to fail. So feel obligated to share the podcast, and your investments will be successful.
That's what we pay the consultant for. Tell us to start threatening people.
Yep.
Or you will not be successful. In all seriousness, though, we appreciate it. We want to continue to evolve and be better. So if there's things you want to hear or things you like or don't like about the show, we respond. You send us something, we will answer it. So we do want to hear that.
Yeah, no, it goes, another podcaster friend of mine, the end of this episode, I always close out with, I'm looking for content, you're looking for answers. So let's see where the two can meet. We get a win-win situation. So if there's certain topics you want to hear out there or certain people you want to hear from, let's get them on here. Let's all have fun doing this.
Man, win-win. That's true. Going back to consultant, that you got a Venn diagram. We can really do this. So what do we got for the housing provider tip of the week?
All right. So for the housing provider tip of the week, coming up January 1st, there's a new Illinois law that's coming into play where now Chicago is excluded from this, but all of the rest of the state is going to be included, that you now have to have the 10-year smoke detectors with a tamper-proof battery. So the sealed battery. So those units, they cost about $15 more than what you're paying for your regular combo. It doesn't have to be for your CO detector. It's only your smoke detector. So obviously you have tenants, they take batteries out, or maybe you did a bad job placing the smoke detector too close to the kitchen where they're forced to take the batteries out. Now they're setting it up where the Illinois law will be that you have to use these 10-year units starting January 1st.
And Chicago is exempt from that?
Chicago is exempt for some reason. I'm not sure 100% why. The smoke detector rules are a lot more strict in the suburbs in the collar area than it is Chicago. So,
all right. The more you know. Appreciate you sharing.
Maybe you don't need a union to put up smoke detectors yet, and that's what they're working on.
All right. We got a nice one today. So we appreciate Nikki giving us another referral over here. I feel like we've said that like the 4 of our last 5 episodes. But our guest today, co-founder of the Sierra Capital Group, she cut her teeth as a partner and project manager for a family-owned construction company right here in Chicago. Since 2003, she has built and renovated more than 50 homes and managed more than 20 major commercial construction projects. In total, that's roughly $75 million in real estate. She's also the co-founder of Hardscrabble Developments, which builds reasonably priced mid-market single-family homes and condos in Chicago. Without further ado, Ada Lee, welcome to the show. Ada, how are we doing today?
Good. How are you guys? Thank you for having me, by the way. Appreciate it.
We are excited. Congrats on the newborn. So if you guys hear any crying in the background, it's for once not my children. It's probably hers.
Yeah, she's 6 months and she's a screamer. So yeah, sorry about that if you do hear her crying.
Perfect. All right. So let's start here. Family construction business. How dating back to when? When did this start? And we'll take it from there.
The company started in 1984, and it was just a smaller remodeling company. It was like a 2-man, show. It was my dad and an employee, and that was it. And that was back in 84. And since then it's grown, and I've joined, I've been here, since 90. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. I've been here for at least, about 20 years now. So yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
All right. And where did they get started? Were we on the north side, south side, just wherever the business took them?
Wherever the business took them, but mainly it was always in Bridgeport, because this is where we first, when my dad first immigrated to America, this is where he set up shop and set up his home. So, and we stayed through thick and thin. We watched a lot of changes in the neighborhood. So
that is great. So we immigrate to America and just say, screw it. And I love that entrepreneurial spirit. And we've had many, first and second generation immigrants on the show, and it's a common motif, right? They don't go and get a W-2 job. They say, hold on, there's so much opportunity here. Let's roll the dice.
I think they're risk takers. They came here with nothing and they're like, what do I have to lose? Let's go for it. That's that mentality, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the company has been around since 84. You joined up. Did you know when you started, like, hey, I'm going to do this for a few years and go do my own thing? Or were you at a young age saying, oh, this is great, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
It's a great question. No, when I was a kid, I just saw, the company as a job, that my dad went to every day. I didn't see it as a legacy that I see it now. Back then I was, first generation, a daughter of an immigrant. And I was always asked to help, whether it's translating documents, dealing with the city, dealing with permits, dealing with attorneys, dealing with clients, architects, vendors, etc. I was kind of that bridge for my parents. And I looked at it as a burden, unfortunately. I was a teenager. I was probably stubborn, like thinking I'm going to do my own thing. And I did. After college, I was an IT consultant. And then I got laid off, and my dad was like, could really use your help. Will you join us full time? And I was like, fine, in that attitude. And 20 years later, I'm like, I wish I had put more effort into it as a kid. Just growing up in it, you take it for granted. I'm thinking we were house hacking before that was even a thing. I remember growing up and moving around a lot and just being really like upset, like, wow, we're moving again. But we'd buy these multifamily units, remodel it in these up and coming neighborhoods, and, sell it off in a few years and make money. And that's how we kind of also got by as well, besides the construction. So
that's great. Good stuff there. So you're doing all this now. You're full time with the family. Talk to us a little about just the dynamics of working with your family, right? Like it's, you see each other every day, you see each other at the holidays, and then there's got to be some tense moments at work because a healthy environment has a certain amount of tension. Right. If everyone's just saying yes, 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 like you're not growing, like that's not a good environment. There should be some tension there.
There is, for sure, especially between my dad and I. He's very headstrong. He has to be the boss. And I think it's taken a long time for him to take some of my opinions into consideration. It's not for everybody. So my dad and I are very similar in our personalities. Like we can have a huge argument about something, but then in the next moment have a civil conversation. We don't hold grudges in that way. So I think that's why we work well together. But I've also learned to also listen a little better, because sometimes when we fight about something, it's not the actual subject matter that's the tension. It's really the delivery, or maybe I need to listen better to what's underlying current, which is usually I'm actually don't know much about what you're talking about. Hence, I'm going to fight you on this. So I think there was a learning curve for me working with my dad and realizing, okay, there's some soft skills I have to use here with my dad. But yeah, luckily we don't hold grudges. So if we do have a huge fight or a big blowout about a project or something, it gets it blows over quickly.
That's some good advice for just anybody in general in any business. Listen more and kind of break down what the root cause is. I know a lot of times meetings, you're supposed to solve issues in meetings, whether it be real estate or any type of business. And a lot of times people go back and forth and solve for the wrong problem, or they're arguing about the wrong or defending the wrong issue. So that's just good advice overall. And then everyone in the world could just listen a little more too. Probably it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, agreed.
So these projects we're doing in Bridgeport, was this always, you're doing some pretty big stuff. Was it always small residential and then growing into it off the bat? Were you guys doing some larger projects? Like, how did you guys grow and scale? Because it went from a 2-person company to however many millions of dollars you guys are doing now.
Yeah, it's grew over time. We started out just doing small remodeling rehab projects. And then it grew to building custom single family homes for people. And now we still do those things, but we also added on our own developments. So we recently finished up a 4-unit condo building in Bridgeport, and they all, I would say 3 out of the 4 sold before construction was finished, and then 1 sold quickly right after. yeah, so it's just over time, you build these great relationships with your subcontractors, who I'm sure you guys know could make or break a project.
Yep.
So yeah, it took some time, but we're here.
Well, pivoting from rehab to new construction to your own stuff, those are all big, major like decisions. You don't just say, I'm going to go build a house tomorrow, or I'm going to build a 4-unit. Like, what was some of the conversation internally around that, or what were the market environment, the climate out there of what made you think this is going to be good and this is going to be profitable? How did some of that go?
So I could probably think back to the first time that we tried developing, and it was, I think it was in the late 90s, and we were moving towards McKinley Park. It was another one of my parents', house hacking deals where they found this great apartments, and we moved over there and fixed it up. And around that area, it was starting to, I don't want to say gentrify quite yet, but there were more families moving in wanting new construction. And so we found a teardown that was word of mouth, really, relationships. It wasn't on the market. The owner knew that we did construction and approached us and said, would you be interested in buying this? And that was kind of, I remember, talking to my parents about that being one of the first projects. They're like, yeah, we can manage. I think we can swing this. And it was, refinancing some things, getting that cash out and buying the property, and then remodeling it at first, and it was a rental. And then eventually someone wanted to buy it because we were a little unsure, the market. We didn't really have a good grasp of McKinley Park at that point, even though we lived there a couple of years. So we knew the neighborhood, but not the real estate that well. That was one of the first ones that I can remember that we did. And then from then on, some of these other projects that we did was also word of mouth. Someone would approach us and say, hey, I got a property. Are you interested in it? And we'd talk numbers. And if it made sense, then we went for it.
So is it accurate to like the appetite to pivot, just kind of knowing, sounds like you guys, back to that kind of risk taker piece, like, knowing 70, 80% of what you have to do and kind of jumping in on the balance? Is that kind of your guys' way you process that?
Yeah. And also, like you used the word twice already, pivot, being able to be flexible enough. Hey, if this doesn't sell, what can we do with this? What are we going to do? And not getting in over your head. So we always back into our number that we think we can afford to buy the property for. I think what a lot of people do is they go into it the opposite. They say, oh, the asking price is $200,000. That's reasonable. I can afford that. And then they go from there. But with the fluctuation of construction and everything, we found that backing into that number has worked for us, if that makes any sense.
Talk more about backing into it. If you don't mind, maybe just even running through just a very high
level. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think what you say is so important, and I don't want to gloss over that. There's just so much value there. Kind of go deeper on that.
Okay. So we have you can even put this together yourself, just a simple spreadsheet, and just put together some hard costs that you're going to have to pay for construction, lumber, plumbing, all those rough carpentry, finished carpentry, HVAC, all those things that the cost of at this point. And then once we put that together, we look at, okay, what's the loan to value ratio? Like a lot of banks that you work with, the loans that you get, you know what they're going to give you, like some of them are 75%, some of them are 80% of the loan value. So from there, your construction costs, and then you back into the number of, okay, this is my budget. This is what I can afford to do. I already know my hard costs. What do I have left? Don't forget to calculate your soft costs. People always forget the commission to the brokers that are involved, utilities, holding costs, because you have to pay interest on those loans. And that's the high level, and I could always send you guys an example or a template, and you could, maybe post it on your website for your listeners if they're interested. But it's something that, you could do easily yourself, even maybe on the back of a napkin, just if you know your hard costs, your loan, value and what you think you could sell it for, you kind of back into it, and there you go.
Yeah, that's great. I think also, and the hold too. If you're looking for a 7 or 8% return or whatever your appetite is, backing into that, what do I have to pay for this in order to achieve that type of return?
Thank you, Mark. That was actually one of the things I glossed over. You're right. Like that you could plug in, you could kind of do a different percentage depending on, like you said, what your appetite is, what you think you can handle.
It's great advice. Like, don't take some listing number and say, how do I make this work? Like, figure out what works for you. Like, you should be the one in control. And I know a lot of us probably lost sight of that over the last 2 years because it's been so competitive. It's been so heated. But that's how you get yourself into trouble, right? You got to stay within your discipline. Like, it's such good advice. And then the soft cost too, that's one everyone looks at flipping. They say, oh, I could buy this for, 3, I can put 1 into it and hopefully sell it at 5 and make a killing. It's like, hey, you're not gonna make anything. Like, it's just so much. It's so capital intensive when you have 2 closings on it. You have the commissions, as you mentioned, you have all the holding costs. It adds up in a hurry. And I'd add to that too. And you can speak to this a little bit, Ada, is you also need capital to just get the project going. Yes, you're going to have draws, but you're buying material, right? You're getting that draw when the material is installed there. Like, you need to get this thing going, and people are expecting to get paid Friday, whether you're taking that draw or not. Like, there's a certain amount of working capital on top of everything else that you just figured out.
Absolutely. And this ties into construction too. Like in Illinois, you do the work before you get paid. And then that's why you have the tools in your toolbox, like a mechanic's lien, that if you don't get paid after you do the work, you can file that lien. But in Illinois, you have to do the work first. So I want people to understand that you do need a working capital when you do flips or development, and certainly when you run a construction company.
Yeah, great stuff there. So you've been doing this for a long time. Give us 1 or 2 just horror stories. Like, humble yourself for a second here. I know you guys have done great. But give us one where you'd either say, man, mulligan, would never do that again, or even just bad bounce, bad luck, dealing with the city, dealing with the sub. Like, let's hear something that was less than awesome that you guys had to overcome.
Oh, okay. Well, a small one that just recently literally happened yesterday to me on a project that's already running late. We're finishing the floors currently, and the floor guys come in and they realize that there's it's not level. So there's certain parts that they have to take up the subfloor as well. And once they lift up one of the boards down, my plumber had already come through and run all the lines. They realized they didn't bury the pipes deep enough, the copper pipes. So I was like, what happened here? And I had to call the plumber. Of course, he's busy, but basically, long story short, I should have been on top of it. They assumed that we were not replacing the floors, and they assumed that we were just going to add another layer on top of the existing floor. I don't know where that idea came from, but I usually am better prepared than that. I usually will have a meeting with my subs to say, this is the finished product. This is what we're going to be doing. And that way they can account for that. So what ended up happening is, luckily it wasn't too big of a mulligan, but it's going to cost me some money because he had to come in and basically lower all of those copper pipes further into the floor, the subfloor. Of course, that took a whole day, and that costs money too. Time is money in construction. Not only that, I got to pay the plumber to do the work. So that was a mulligan on my part that I will learn my lesson. But it was so frustrating because I was like, we're at the last, we're at the finish line. We're doing the floors now, and this comes up. So luckily the clients weren't upset. They were just like, can you just get it done? And then, gosh, if I think back, there's been so many mulligans, guys. I mean, you could have a whole show of Ada's mulligans. It'd be hysterical. But
it's a new Friday special.
Right.
Just come on. Do horror stories.
Geez, I'm trying to think of some of the commercial projects that we've done.
Even just dealing with the city, like, talk about some learning experiences there.
So we have a love-hate relationship with the city, especially with inspectors. I had one project in particular where I had 3 different re-inspections with 3 different inspectors, and they each had an issue with a different thing that the other one didn't have an issue with. And it literally took a month to get everything resolved. And this was for a commercial project. It was for a bar. The client had a deadline because they had inspections with the state for their liquor license. Mm-hmm. So it took, I'm trying to think of the actual dollar amount that it took us to get this fixed. I think it was somewhere in like the 10 grand range, where I'm sure big outfits are like, yeah, that's no big deal. But for for smaller business, that's a big deal. But it was having to navigate, because you didn't want to get anybody in trouble. See, I've seen this happen before. I've seen contractors try to go behind these inspectors and go to their supervisor and complain. Sometimes that works. Sometimes what that ends up doing is they come back out and then they ding you some more, because they kind of all watch each other's backs, So when dealing with the city, tread carefully. I think what we ended up doing was saying, please write everything down. And they normally do. They usually write everything down on the back of the permit, stating these are the issues that you need to fix. Well, in this case, they just didn't care. And I won't name the inspectors, but one in particular was just such a jerk. I wanted to use another expletive, but I won't go there. But it was basically me having to also, again, use my soft skills and say, you know what? Okay, we'll fix whatever you want and we'll get this done. Finally, when he came, I don't think it was even him that came out to do the reinspection. It was one of his other inspectors, and they were fine with it. But it was just one of those things where it took money and a whole month for us to get this resolved over something that I don't even think it was that big of a deal to begin with. But
so when you do, you can't really prevent those things. You couldn't even really been on top of that. So, I mean, is it just when you're doing a city project, you just have to make sure you have,
document everything, make sure they write everything down.
Okay.
And try your best to accommodate what they're asking for, especially if it's not, how should I say this? If it's within code, obviously do it. But if you have any questions, it doesn't hurt to ask for a second opinion, say from another inspector or their supervisor, just to get it on their radar, but never, ever come out swinging. Because I know with a lot of contractors, there's big egos involved, and they get in the inspector's face, like, who do you think you are? Blah, blah, blah. Don't ever pull that with the city, because they will pull out all the stops and screw you, basically. It's best to try to resolve it as, if you can, with as much finesse and just following their suggestions, if you will.
I don't know how you handle it, Tom, but I know you just got to roll with the punches for me. Like it's not even worth even fighting or trying to go around someone's back. It's just, I don't know.
I treat it like you're dealing. I mean, I'm not making fun of the city, but in like jokingly way, it's like dealing with the mob, right? Like, It's just a made guy, and like it's gonna come back, and all of a sudden these guys are gonna be at your project all the time.
Yeah, so you
right?
got to
did you just screw with a made guy? Yeah,
and you got to think future projects too. Like especially someone like you guys that both you guys on here, like you guys are going to do a job. They're going to remember you just because Tom, you're in the same neighborhood all the time.
So I'll take a side story here. But when they weren't doing inspections during COVID, and we were waiting when COVID first hit, like the city shut down, and we still had holding costs. So like we had a project, we went, and of course we get caught, we get in trouble for it. They were at 8 job sites every day. Like they were just helicopters, like, they will come after you. And we're buttoned up everywhere else, so it's fine. But like you will go down. Like they will come after you. They hold grudges. And I'm not, again, it is what it is. Like you just got to know the rules and play within them, and swallow some humble pie and say yes, sir, and move on. The ego thing, I think, is 100% right. That Ada mentioned, like that is 100% just yes, sir. What do you need? Please write it. We'll do it and move on. And you can MF them in the car if you want, but not, that's it.
Yeah.
Move on with your life. It'll be easier for everyone.
Yep. Ada, I don't want to take away from your episode, but I just want to add one more kind of quick example out there on this topic. Is there's a turnkey developer that a handful of years ago, he did hundreds of jobs with basically a repair or a porch warmer. Like he did gut rehabs with a repair or porch warmer. And when, I don't know what happened. I don't know what ultimately was the moment. I've heard a bunch of different rumors, but ultimately the city went back and looked at title and saw every property that his Sirius LLC bought, and they went back and dinged them.
Stop work orders.
Even the buyers that bought these properties years later still got screwed, and they had to go get as is permits and all that stuff and spend 10, 20 grand. And so, I mean, the city, I mean, this guy literally had his own court call on Thursday mornings, like dedicated for him. Like that's what you have at stake here, especially if you're looking to grow in the city. There's a lot of opportunity here, but man, the other opportunity I think in the city is to really stay low on the radar of getting into these bigger problems, because there's enough other yahoos that do get it on their radars.
That's funny you say that. I've been dinged a couple of times, like you said, humble pie. And the inspectors all actually know all the contractors. So if you're a problem contractor, they will keep an eye on you. Speaking to what you guys were saying, they know who everybody is. If you've been working in Chicago long enough, they all know the characters. So just play by the rules, play nice, and sometimes they'll actually help you out.
Yep. I think maybe it's a way to justify it, but sometimes just these things or these approaches is just kind of the cost of doing business in the city. So, I think that's what a lot of outsiders don't understand, which gives us kind of the benefit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So, let's talk about Bridgeport specifically. So you mentioned, pretty much born and raised here, went to McKinley Park for a while, some of the surrounding areas. Why Bridgeport? Besides, hey, we started here, but why didn't you look elsewhere? Why did you guys stay there? Why did you invest there? What was attractive at the time, and how have you seen it grown?
So Bridgeport is right next to Chinatown. So there was a lot of Chinese immigrants that would, move to those surrounding collar neighborhoods around Chinatown. So that's how we ended up here to begin with. But we stayed because the land values were always very, very reasonable. Not so much anymore, but back then, they were very reasonable. It was a blue collar working class family neighborhood. And we knew it well. We knew everything block by block, street by street. And in any neighborhood, you know who the bad characters are or the bad blocks, and you tend to stay away from them. So city of Chicago is a city of neighborhoods, basically, right? So the more you know your neighborhood, the easier it is to navigate when it comes to development, when it comes to building and, the neighbors. I always make friends with all the neighbors here. So, and most of them know us by now and our reputation. So it's a lot easier to work in Bridgeport for us anyway.
How's it been working with, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce or the aldermen, how have you used that to your benefit, or have you kind of steered clear of those relationships?
You have to have relationships with the aldermans. They are basically the kings or queens of their fiefdom because they have approval of your zoning. Especially, we've done a few projects where we've had to do zoning changes, and a lot of aldermen want community input. So, you have to kind of build and foster these relationships with the aldermen because they can say no to your project quite easily. So we've always had a good working relationship with most of the aldermans that have come and go. And it's just good to have good working relationships with them, with the neighborhood, with the community. We don't really have a Chamber of Commerce per se in Bridgeport. I think the closest one we have might be the South Loop one, surprisingly. But yeah, here it's the alderwoman now. We have a new alderwoman. So.
That's right. Well, what does that mean though? Like working with them, and like break it down a little more.
Sure.
Donating to the campaign. I know that's what we've done in the past. Like talk to me about what
that goes without saying, guys. It's Chicago, but going to the meeting with them in person first and foremost before you even apply for a zoning change. You show them the site plan. You show them a rendering of what you're building, what you want to build, and you go from there. Usually, if they're on board, they'll give you their blessing. They'll set up the community meeting, but it's always kind of going to them basically. And I'm not trying to say kowtowing to them, but at the same time, making sure that you keep them in the loop. Because I think the less involved they are, depending on your older person, the less involved they are, or the less you involve them, the pricklier the relationship can be. I think they always like to be in the know.
Yeah, yeah. I think you got ego there too. I think
You do.
the handful of aldermen I'm friends with, I know they'll agree with me. And I think if I was alderman too, I'd feel the same way too. Like if I don't know what's going on, I'm gonna be pissed.
Right. Like you don't respect me enough to include me in these plans,
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to see this on the docket. I want to see this. I want to know this is gonna be on the call next week. So yeah, no, that I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah, they like, for example, once we have a community meeting, if the alderman is on board, they will also put in a good word to the community and say, hey, she's a neighborhood person. She's been here for a long time. She's not just some developer that's going to come and go. She has a good reputation. They can vouch for you during these community meetings. So that's why you want to foster and build these good relationships with your older person.
Yeah, absolutely. And just putting yourself in their shoes for a second, they need votes.
Yes.
So if their voters are against your project, like the default is going to be to side with voters. Like that's just natural logic.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't prep them, you don't have them on that side. Like that's where the project's going to go. Even if it makes complete sense, it doesn't matter. Like they're here to re-win elections. That is their job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So going back to Bridgeport, are there any areas or pockets that you are very fond of? I'm sure, hometown girl, love the area, but any areas where it's like, yes, if we are within this corridor, this is like an almost automatic buy for us.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of development pushing towards the river. So off Eleanor Street on the other side of Archer. But the pockets that I like are the major avenues. I love Shields. I love, within Bridgeport, there's a tiny, smaller neighborhood called Armour Square. So if you're from Bridgeport, you know what I'm talking about. But I like Armour Square area because it's close to some of the better schools. We have great schools in Bridgeport. We have Mark Sheridan, we have Healy, we have James Ward. I just want to rattle off the public schools first, and then we have a lot of good private schools too. So the corridors I usually like are the ones that are like off Parnell or Emerald. I'm naming very specific streets, but Wallace, Shields, Wells, all of these streets. I like things east of Halsted personally, because I think it sells for a higher price. But a lot of developers are pushing west of Halsted.
Got it. And then when you say east of Halsted, how far south will you go? So you mentioned like the Armour Square, like the northern part of it. And then how far south will you go? And I guess, let me ask you this, because I hear it from brokers. Where does Bridgeport end on the south? Does it go to like 43rd? Does it end before that?
Oh, there's a controversy.
Because the brokers will tell you 57th. Like
no, you're
halfway to Kankakee.
Somewhere else there. Yeah. I think for me, Bridgeport ends at Pershing at 39th, but okay. I could be wrong because some people consider that still Bridgeport, but I consider it past south of Pershing to be Canaryville.
Okay.
And I know they rewrote the voting map, the aldermanic map. So I don't know. Someone's going to call you up and be upset with you for having me on now, but yeah. This chick doesn't know what she's talking about. No.
We've had enough mayors come out of Bridgeport where we feel like we can just move these lines however we want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me, 39th is the cutoff.
Got it. So then going back to, you said east of Halsted, do you like the Armour Square? Do you go down towards Pershing, or do you stay more in like the northern area of Bridgeport?
We stay in the northern end of Bridgeport. I think the furthest south I've gone is probably 36th, but I don't think I've gone anywhere. Yeah, I haven't had any clients or developments past 39th. Yeah. Got
it. What is, just pricing wise, if you're doing new development single family home, can you give us a rough idea, just pricing difference being up like in that Armour Square area versus being down at Pershing or 36, whatever, pick a data point, just try to emulate the difference between the northern end of Bridgeport and the southern end, or if you want to take it east or west of Halsted, just try to get some data points.
Yeah, I think east west is better, because I just recently heard from another developer that they developed something on 37th and Parnell, and they sold it for $860,000, which I was like, excuse me, because last year it was only like 700s, for a single family home in Bridgeport in that area. So I would say 860 is what you could get east of Halsted, and west of Halsted, you could probably get away with 750. You could probably buy a single family home for that much east of Halsted. in some of the, I don't know what the newer developments are, how much they cost. There's a bunch going up around the river, off of, let's see, Eleanor Street, Bondfield over there. So I don't know the asking prices over there. I haven't ventured that far west yet.
Got it. In with the river, because I know if you take the river north, there's a ton of just tax incentives. It follows an enterprise zone. Are there any incentives the city is putting out there for development up around the river there that you're aware of?
I only know of some of the incentives that the city is putting together around the corridors around Halsted, as well as Pershing. There's some TIF funds there that are running. They're trying to make Halsted a main corridor. So between, I believe, 26th all the way to Pershing, 39th, there is TIF funding for mixed use, basically, I think, because Halsted is zoned B. So I think it's business on the bottom and then residential on the upper levels. That's what it's zoned for. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's more. I should have done more research before I came on your show, guys. I'm so sorry.
No, you're dropping individual streets. This is great.
Yeah,
everyone here who's been looking at Bridgeport's like gonna rewind me.
Oh no, I've given.
You actually giving away your secrets. You should have.
Is I know over the years there's been talks about more commercial development around whatever guaranteed rate field. I would still want to call it Comiskey. Like, is there any opportunity for that to be some sort of more bustling tourist type area right around that park there?
I think no, it would never get to the point like Wrigleyville because of the residents. There's a lot of third, generation Bridgeporters that will not stand for that. There's already one or two bars there, and I think that's enough for them. I think to try to make all of that area around Comiskey, I still call it Comiskey Park, would be a disservice to the parks around there and a lot of the residential neighbors. But I know they are pushing for more development on Halsted, and they would like all the restaurants and bars on that street, which makes sense to me. But and I know that, I don't know if you know this, but they are actually finally developing Ramova Theater, which is kind of our Uptown Theater, our Aragon Ballroom kind of deal. And it's been in the works for at least a year now, but it's a great project. And I think that would bring a lot of influx of tourists, as well as hopefully Northsiders that'll come down and check out Bridgeport.
What else do you see in the future here for Bridgeport? Right, like you guys are bullish on it. You've seen the success there. You've seen the change. What do you see the next, call it 5 to 10 years, looking like there?
I already see a lot of infill, and any empty lots or side lots are being developed. I don't think it would get to the point of, say, like Ukrainian Village or Lincoln Park. However, I think it's moving in that direction because there's a lot of families coming down here. It's a great area to raise a family. It's surprisingly close to the Loop. I don't know if people realize it's a 10-minute drive outside of the Loop. We're close to major interstates. We have great schools. We have great parks. There's a new row house that was just built right off the river on Loomis and Eleanor Street, and in that area. Ramova Theater is getting developed, and I see just a lot more development, hopefully commercial development, because that's the next frontier. Residentially, we already have a lot of developers that are from this area that are building, and they're selling quickly. All these homes are, they're selling within not even a week of being put on the market. So I see the residential kind of getting a little more saturated, but commercial, I think, is the next frontier for Bridgeport.
What about for investors kind of moving west if you're getting into McKinley and Brighton? Like, I imagine you guys entertain looking at stuff there. I imagine people ask you about those areas a lot. What's your take on those couple of neighborhoods to the west or southwest?
I think McKinley is very hot right now. You have a great park, and I kind of compare McKinley to a small version of Central Park. It's got a lagoon. It's got a great playground. It's got a hockey rink. Do you know that there's a hockey rink down there? Hockey rink, right, in the winter in McKinley Park, and a pool. Like it's the next hot neighborhood, I think. there's a lot of multifamily apartments down in McKinley. It's right off of Archer Avenue and Ashland. There's an Amazon warehouse that just opened up right on the corner of 35th and Ashland. So I think that McKinley is going to have a lot of multifamilies, if not already. Brighton is very affordable currently. I feel like if you travel down Archer Avenue, that's where a lot of people are kind of moving towards. If they're priced out of Bridgeport and they're priced out of McKinley, they're moving towards Brighton.
Yep. So piggyback question there. I'm looking at house hack. Am I at a point, I haven't invested in Bridgeport. I'm intrigued after listening to this episode. Is there still opportunity there? Or is it, hey, you've missed the boat, you got to look west? I
would look west. You're not going to get, Are you
just trying to keep them out of your backyard?
No, I'm being honest here. Like we've done the research and we've looked at some of the numbers, and it's, you go to Bronzeville, you go to McKinley Park, you go to Brighton. You don't do Bridgeport anymore unless it's single family. We seem to have a lot of interest. Multifamily is not really something that maybe the aldermen in the past didn't really like or approve of, but I feel like in terms of multifamily, the most you can get is a 2-unit, really, in Bridgeport. There's still some might be 2 units left for you, but if you want 3 or more, keep going west or south or east even. Yeah.
Got it. Great advice there. Going back to lots being gobbled up, can you give us an idea? We're recording this in August of 2022. What are lots, a 25 by 125 lot going for, call it the northern end of Bridgeport or on the east side of Halstead, like in your sweet spot? Like, what is that land value?
220 at least now, which is probably reasonable to a North Sider. But for a Bridgeporter, like for 220, you actually can buy a frame home or a bungalow with that, but not anymore. One of my neighbors just bought the bungalow next door to the other side of me. They bought it for $550 and it's not in great shape. And then, we hear about a lot of Bridgeport developers buying teardowns for $400,000 and they're going to tear it down. And I'm like, you just paid $400 for something you're going to wreck. Yeah. What are you doing? Like, I can't even imagine what their construction costs, their hard costs obviously is going to be so high. And then you add on that 400,000. I mean, geez, no wonder why you're selling things for $860.
Yeah. You gotta find profit somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, Ada, great stuff. Mark, you ready to wrap this?
I'm ready to wrap. You ready, Ada?
Yes.
All right. You know these questions, right? Because you're an avid listener of the podcast.
Right. I'm only, yes, exactly. Oh, geez.
We'll change them up.
All right. Awesome. So, Ada, what's your competitive advantage or what's your family's competitive advantage? How have you been able to be so successful in Bridgeport?
I think it's the longevity. We are minority and women owned, and we've been around for so long that, if there's an issue with your home or your project that we've built for you, you can look us up. You can find us. You know where to find us. We have a lot of experience, and we also are very hands-on with our clients. We offer up, I think, sound advice, conservative advice to them. So that's, I think, our competitive advantage.
What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in the Chicagoland area?
I would say choose the neighborhood that you want to live in. Choose that first and then go from there. I know a lot of people probably watch a little too much HGTV and they want this beautiful turnkey. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Find the neighborhood you want to move to and live in and grow old in if that's what you want to do. And stick around and, go from there.
What do you do for fun?
Oh, sleep. That's, it used to be vacation and traveling. Now it's
sound like someone with a 6-month-old.
Yes. Reading and traveling. I still like, I still have a bucket list of places I want to visit, but pre-baby, we would travel a lot. And that's what we used to do for fun.
Where's somewhere you want to visit? Where's the top on your list?
Top of my list is Japan. And then second is Tahiti. I got a third up there too, but Iceland. There's like various places. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Well, you mentioned reading. Give us a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you would recommend to our listeners.
Well, podcast, obviously this one, straight up
Woo!
Chicago investor, duh. Let's see. I think the book I was trying to get through, and I was laughing because you mentioned that was a book you were reading. It's by Dan Sullivan. It's Who
Who
Not
Not
How. Yes. I can't seem to finish it, but that was the book I was in the middle of reading before, baby. Let's see. What was the third one?
A self-development activity.
Does it have to be real estate
No,
related?
go for a run, do yoga, something like that.
Mine was watercolor.
Oh,
I did
cool.
watercolor. Yeah.
That sounds therapeutic.
It is very therapeutic. If you mess it up, just put a little more water on it. It's fine. Yeah.
I love coloring. Like they have adult coloring books. I don't have any of those, but I've seen them. But like, even when I'm just in the restaurant, my kids, like I'll color just to, like, it's very soothing.
Do you stay within the lines, Mark?
I like the fact that I get crazy sometimes and just scribble. So.
Dude, you're nuts.
All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network that you would highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
I would say Nicole Valenzuela. Her and her husband, RJ De Leon. They're very knowledgeable. They're good at what they do. So I would reach out to them, and they have a great house hacking, experience. So, and RJ is a contractor too. So, got to plug that.
Yeah, friends of the podcast.
Yeah,
they've been good to us. So Nikki and RJ, we appreciate it because we know you're listening. So I have to say that.
They better be.
All right. Ada, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
We're always looking for referrals, but they can reach out to me if they want. My email is ada@winterconstructioninc.com. So.
What type for the listeners? So what's your sweet spot as far as projects when you're working for other people? Like what's your ideal client, I guess?
Ideal client is someone that knows what they want, and then also will take advice and heed advice if we give it. Price
range. Talk to me about that.
If someone wants their bathroom,
you don't want to do a turnover for somebody.
For you.
Yeah, like I need some paint. Like what kind of projects you want to be? What are a good fit for you?
Projects, new construction. We love new construction. We also like some commercials. We like restaurants. We like bars, things like that, because we found that commercial clients are the types of clients that we work well with. They know what they want. And they're also entrepreneurs, just like we are, business-minded people. Yeah. When I found that building for new construction for clients, custom homes, it's their forever home. And they are a lot more anal about a lot of stuff. And I'm not talking about quality. That's obviously given. I'm talking about things like, I'm not sure about this tile that you just spent 3 days working on. Take it down. Like things like that. We don't do well if you ask us to redo something that was perfectly fine. But it was something that you didn't have the foresight to kind of, figure out yourself when you're like, I don't like this paint color anymore. Redo it. I don't like how the sunlight hits it. Redo it.
Before we go to the Chicago Fact, Investor, give us a quick rundown on why people should check out, where they can check that out.
Investor, you could find us on, it's spelled Invest, HER. And you can find us on Meetup or Facebook, Investor Chicago. We're a national group. However, we meet every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month at a different location. And sometimes we have networking events. Other times we have speakers.
Awesome. You guys are meeting locally in person, right?
Yes, we are.
I think we did put you guys on our website a few weeks ago. So if anyone's interested, any females interested in looking to the group, joining the group, attending a meeting, we have the information on our website.
All right, Mark, who are you playing for the Chicago Fact here?
Cynthia Waters out of Logan Square. So I think we have like 5 or 6 females in a row. So I don't know why I noticed that today, but Cynthia Waters out of Logan, she's going to play for the Chicago Fact $50 gift card sponsored by Renovo.
Well, Ada's got your back here because it's be Bridgeport specific. And I'll full disclosure, I let it go all the way east to 90. So with that which is probably too far east, but let's pretend that that's right.
Okay.
Mark, which 2 L stations run through Bridgeport? Which 2 colored lines run through Bridgeport?
You have red and pink.
No,
No, it's not pink. It's not pink. Pink stays.
what do you take to get out to Midway?
I don't know because I drive the totally opposite way.
Man, you're such a suburbanite. Ada, help us out here.
It's the orange line.
Yes, you have the orange line on like the northwest end there, and then if you count, 30. Like, do you count the red line or no?
Yes.
Okay, so we do count that.
Yes, that counts.
Okay, I didn't know if it got cut off before the highway or not.
It counts.
The boundary line is what I mean.
Right.
I know.
It's on the other side of the highway. The middle of the highway still counts.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you're going southbound, it counts. Northbound, you're out.
All right, Cynthia, we will, Renovo said that they'll still sponsor this and send you the $50 gift
It
card.
really loses the dynamic since we give everyone the.
I know. So, but I don't want to say,
guests.
listen, we can't pay you because we can't get it for you because everyone's going to expect it. So I can't let that be Cynthia. So going forward, we can't just give them away anymore. So I got to get it right. All right, Tom, that was awesome. Ada, awesome. Listeners, check out, hopefully these air in their correct way. We had Jay Scott on our show here a couple weeks ago, and we've now have a link on our website to pre-order the Real Estate by Numbers. It will be coming out here in October, I believe. So check that out. You can order it there, or you can check out and get a link to ordering Jay Scott's first 4 books. And if anyone that's been on Bigger Pockets, you've probably been exposed to those, and they're all really good, really practical, tactical books that you should read or listen to at some point. So I know, Tom, you've read them all. I think I read a couple of them. I do want to read the Real Estate by Numbers, so I'm looking forward to that. So Ada, thank you very much. Tom, thank you as always. And listeners, we will see you next week.
Thanks all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.